dive into the dark and treacherous world of the 7 deadly sins. This riveting exploration reveals the sinister origins, devastating consequences, and the ultimate path to redemption. Each sin lurks in the human soul, waiting to ensnare its next victim. Arm yourself with knowledge and virtue as you confront these formidable foes, drawing strength from the divine teachings and the ultimate sacrifice of Jesus Christ. Prepare for an emotional and spiritual battle that will test your faith and fortitude to the very core. The 7 deadly sins, according to the Christian tradition, are pride, greed, envy, wrath, lust, gluttony, and sloth. Each of them has a meaning, consequences, and ways to combat them. The first deadly sin is pride, which is defined as the excessive love of oneself and the contempt for others. Pride implies a lack of humility, charity, and obedience to God, and a lack of respect, consideration, and service to others. Pride is the sin committed by the devil and his angels when they rebelled against God and were cast out of heaven. It is also the sin committed by Adam and Eve when they disobeyed God's command and ate the forbidden fruit, desiring to be like God. The Bible condemns pride in many verses. Pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall. Proverbs 16 verse 18. The Lord detests all the proud of heart. Be sure of this. They will not go unpunished. Proverbs 16 verse 5. A God opposes the proud, but shows favor to the humble. James 4 verse 6. The way to overcome pride is to practice the virtue of humility, which consists of recognizing one's own limitations and weaknesses, and accepting God's greatness and mercy. Humility also involves respecting and valuing others, and serving and helping them generously and selflessly. Humility also involves obeying God's will and His commandments, and trusting in His wisdom and providence. The greatest example of humility is found in Jesus Christ, who, being God, humbled Himself and became man, and obediently accepted death on the cross. The Bible exhorts us to imitate His humility. Ye have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who, being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to His own advantage. Rather, He made Himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. And being found in appearance as a man, He humbled Himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. Philippians 2 verses 5 to 8. The second deadly sin is greed, which is defined as the excessive desire to possess material goods and wealth without respecting justice and charity. Greed implies a lack of generosity, solidarity, and detachment from earthly things, and a lack of trust in God and His providence. Greed is the sin committed by Judas Iscariot, who betrayed Jesus for 30 pieces of silver, and ended up hanging himself out of remorse. It is also the sin committed by Ananias and Sapphira, who lied to the apostles about the sale of their property and kept part of the money, and were struck dead by God. The Bible condemns greed in many verses. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. Some people, eager for money, have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. 1 Timothy 6 verse 10. And no one can serve 2 masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. Matthew 6 verse 24. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Matthew 6 verses 19 to 21. The way to overcome greed is to practice the virtue of generosity, which consists of sharing with others the goods and wealth received from God. Generosity also involves helping the needy and the poor, and collaborating in the construction of a more just and fraternal society. Generosity also involves detaching oneself from earthly things and putting one's trust in God and His providence. The greatest example of generosity is found in Jesus Christ, who gave His life for us and taught us to give without expecting anything in return. The Bible exhorts us to imitate His generosity. It is more blessed to give than to receive. Acts 20 verse 35. The third deadly sin is envy, which is defined as the feeling of sadness or resentment at the good of others, without respecting their dignity and happiness. Envy implies a lack of benevolence, gratitude, and satisfaction with one's own goods and qualities, and a lack of respect, admiration, and collaboration with others. Envy is the sin committed by Cain, who killed his brother Abel out of jealousy because God accepted Abel's offering and rejected his. It is also the sin committed by Joseph's brothers, who sold him into slavery out of jealousy because their father loved him more than them and gave him a special coat. The Bible condemns envy in many verses. For where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you find disorder and every evil practice. James 3 verse 16. A heart at peace gives life to the body, but envy rots the bones. Proverbs 14 verse 30. Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. 1 Corinthians 13 verse 4. The way to overcome envy is to practice the virtue of benevolence, which consists of rejoicing at the good of others and collaborating in their happiness and well-being. Benevolence also involves being grateful and satisfied with one's own goods and qualities, and recognizing them as gifts from God. Benevolence also involves admiring and respecting others, and valuing and encouraging their talents and achievements. The greatest example of benevolence is found in Jesus Christ, who rejoiced at the good of others and taught us to love our neighbor as ourselves. The Bible exhorts us to imitate his benevolence. Rejoice with those who rejoice, mourn with those who mourn. Romans 12 verse 15. The fourth deadly sin is wrath, which is defined as the feeling of indignation or violent anger against someone or something without respecting justice and charity. Wrath implies a lack of meekness, patience, and forgiveness towards others, and a lack of trust in God and his justice and mercy. Wrath is the sin committed by Moses, who broke the tablets of the law out of anger when he saw the people worshipping the golden calf, and struck the rock twice to bring forth water instead of speaking to it as God commanded. It is also the sin committed by Jonah, who was angry with God for forgiving the people of Nineveh, and wished to die rather than see them spared. The Bible condemns wrath in many verses. Refrain from anger and turn from wrath. Do not fret, it leads only to evil. Psalm 37 verse 8. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry, and do not give the devil a foothold. Ephesians 4 verses 26 to 27. A human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. James 1 verse 20. The way to overcome wrath is to practice the virtue of meekness, which consists of controlling impulses of anger and responding with calm and patience to provocations and offenses. Meekness also involves humility and trust in God and his justice and mercy. Meekness also involves understanding and forgiving others, and seeking reconciliation and peace. Meekness also involves renouncing violence and hatred, and opting for nonviolence and love even towards enemies. The greatest example of meekness is found in Jesus Christ, who was mistreated and unjustly crucified, but responded with love and forgiveness. The Bible exhorts us to imitate his meekness. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Matthew 5 verse 5. The fifth deadly sin is lust, which is defined as the disordered or uncontrolled desire for sexual pleasure without respecting the dignity, freedom, and love of the person. Lust implies a lack of chastity, fidelity, and responsibility in sexual relationships, and a lack of self-control and respect for oneself and others. Lust is the sin committed by the inhabitants of Sodom and Gomorrah, who gave themselves over to lust and violence, and were destroyed by God. It is also the sin committed by Eli's sons, who slept with the women who served at the temple, and were punished by God. The Bible condemns lust in many verses. The one who commits adultery with a woman lacks sense. He who does it destroys himself. Proverbs 6 verses 32 to 33. Flee from sexual immorality. All other sins a person commits are outside the body, but whoever sins sexually, sins against their own body. 1 Corinthians 6 verse 18. Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked, for whatever one sows, that will he also reap. Galatians 6 verse 7. The way to overcome lust is to practice the virtue of chastity, which consists of living sexuality according to the dignity, freedom, and love of the person. Chastity also involves respecting one's own body and that of others, and treating it with purity and holiness. Chastity also involves living sexuality according to God's design and His natural and revealed law, and renouncing everything that degrades and perverts it. Chastity also involves cultivating authentic love and mutual respect in personal relationships, and fighting against pornography, promiscuity, and sexual exploitation. The greatest example of chastity is found in Jesus Christ, who lived in celibacy and purity, and respected the dignity of women and the integrity of their bodies. The Bible exhorts us to imitate His chastity. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Matthew 5 verse 8. The sixth deadly sin is gluttony, which is defined as the disordered or uncontrolled desire to eat and drink without respecting temperance, health, and the needs of others. Gluttony implies a lack of moderation, self-control, and sobriety in eating and drinking, and a lack of charity, solidarity, and generosity towards others. Gluttony is the sin committed by Esau, who sold his birthright for a bowl of stew, and lost his father's blessing. It is also the sin committed by the rich man, who feasted sumptuously every day while Lazarus, a poor man, lay at his gate, and ended up in torment in Hades. The Bible condemns gluttony in many verses. Do not join those who drink too much wine or gorge themselves on meat, for drunkards and gluttons become poor, and drowsiness clothes them in rags. Proverbs 23 verses 20 to 21. Their destiny is destruction, their God is their stomach, and their glory is in their shame. Their mind is set on earthly things. Philippians 3 verse 19. So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it all for the glory of God. 1 Corinthians 10 verse 31. The way to overcome gluttony is to practice the virtue of temperance, which consists of moderating the desire to eat and drink, and exercising self-control and sobriety. Temperance also involves respecting one's own health and that of others, and seeking a balanced and healthy diet. Temperance also involves being charitable and generous towards others, and sharing food and drink with those in need. The greatest example of temperance is found in Jesus Christ, who fasted for 40 days in the desert and taught us to pray and fast with sincerity and humility. The Bible exhorts us to imitate His temperance. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Matthew 5 verse 6. The seventh deadly sin is sloth, which is defined as the disordered or uncontrolled desire to rest and sleep without respecting diligence, responsibility, and the needs of others. Sloth implies a lack of diligence, responsibility, and commitment to one's own obligations and the needs of others. Sloth is the sin committed by the unfaithful servant, who buried the talent his master had entrusted to him instead of investing and multiplying it. It is also the sin committed by the inhabitants of Sodom and Gomorrah, who gave themselves over to lust and violence, and were destroyed by God. The Bible condemns sloth in many verses. Do not love sleep or you will grow poor. Stay awake and you will have food to spare ye. Proverbs 20 verse 13. One who is slack in his work is brother to one who destroys. Proverbs 18 verse 9. Lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth. Proverbs 10 verse 4. The way to overcome sloth is to practice the virtue of diligence, which consists of promptly and carefully performing one's own tasks and duties, and making good use of time and talents received from God. Diligence also involves cultivating a spirit of work and sacrifice, and overcoming laziness and comfort. Diligence also involves setting clear goals and objectives, and striving to achieve them with perseverance and tenacity. Diligence also involves helping others in their needs and difficulties, and collaborating with them in the construction of the common good. The greatest example of diligence is found in Jesus Christ, who worked as a carpenter in Nazareth, and preached the gospel in Galilee, Judea, and Samaria. The Bible exhorts us to imitate His diligence, because you know that the Lord will reward each one for whatever good they do, whether they are slave or free. Colossians 3 verse 24. In conclusion, the 7 deadly sins are pride, greed, envy, wrath, lust, gluttony, and sloth. Each of them has a meaning, consequences, and ways to combat them. Pride is the excessive love of oneself and the contempt for others. Greed is the excessive desire to possess material goods and wealth. Envy is the feeling of sadness or resentment at the good of others. Wrath is the feeling of indignation or violent anger against someone or something. Lust is the disordered or uncontrolled desire for sexual pleasure. Gluttony is the disordered or uncontrolled desire to eat and drink. And sloth is the disordered or uncontrolled desire to rest and sleep. The way to overcome these sins is to practice the opposing virtues, which are humility, generosity, benevolence, meekness, chastity, temperance, and diligence. These virtues help us live according to God's will and attain happiness and fullness of life. As you depart from this profound journey through the 7 deadly sins, may you carry with you the strength and wisdom to overcome these temptations. May the grace of God guide your steps, the love of Christ fill your heart, and the Holy Spirit empower you to live a life of virtue and righteousness. Stay steadfast in your pursuit of holiness, and remember that redemption is always within reach. We invite you to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring content that nourishes the soul and strengthens your faith. Blessings to you all.